right, Prof, it's been an interesting, let's say 78, 24, 48 hours between you and the APC. I read the statement by Felix Morka responding to some of the things you said, say you are unilaterally declaring a shadow government, using words I don't want to repeat on television. But let's get your initial reaction on some of the things you read from Felix Morka's statement.
I don't want to talk about Felix Morka. It will be disturbing of my sense of properness. Felix Morka is somebody I consider a friend. He used to spend a lot of time in my house. One of the sad things that politics has done in Nigeria is that it has allowed us to see the sides of people that we did not think was possible. If we could only focus on issues, it will save us where we've come to in Nigerian politics. But there is a tendency to go ad hominem in the culture of the APC. If you get on the internet, one of the things you read there that I was saying about being born in the North, school in the West and all of that, and knowing Nigeria. If you got on social media, you would think Nigerians are haters of each other because the venom with which they're insulting people. This is Nigeria I grew up in. At Nsukka, as an undergraduate, they called me Yoruba boy. People didn't realize that I was actually Igbo because 80% of my friends in Nsukka were Yoruba boys. And my politics have always been around Southwest type things. So to come to where we are in Nigeria today, for me, mentally, it's just not possible to reconcile it. Is this Nigeria that I know? Is this how people think of each other? It's not. So, it's clear that politicians have accentuated identity politics to be able to achieve personal goals. They don't seem to realize how much it has destroyed the country, torn its fabric, such that it makes achieving goals very, very difficult. It's like shooting yourself in the foot. But I don't know what their goals are. So I don't want to speak to Felix Morka's comments in any personal way. Let's take down the issues that he's brought up. First of all, about
the shadow government.
Shadow government being, what did he say it was?
In a presidential democracy.
Yeah. Nothing can be more democratic than a group of citizens getting together to say, let's find a structured way of asking governments to be more accountable. What could possibly be more democratic than that? I like to usually preface this conversation with what we've done to the African. There is the Afrobarometer annual surveys that have gone on since 1999 of how Nigerians, Africans generally, but in every country specific, with all kinds of details. I mean, I want every Nigerian who really wants to understand what has happened to our continent to go and study the Afrobarometer readings. It says that Africans still love democracy, cling on to it, but they have given up, more or less. They're tired because their democracies are not working. Now, any really serious Democrat has to be concerned to read this data, longitudinal, showing that people are fed up with what we call democracy. So, trying to make democracy find renewal, find revival, should be something that any true Democrat would embrace. My expectation is that something like this will be, hailed by the APC, especially if you go back to the roots of the APC. I mean, I don't want people to forget history. But how did the APC start? Felix Morka used to come and run around with me in the early days, stay in the back of my car and tell me things. That's one of the things I'm doing now. Felix Morka used to be the one urging me that I should be doing them. So it's sad. But in those early days, when the PDP was talking about it will be in power for, 60 years or some of us began to get worried. That's where this whole thing started. The leadership newspaper, in, I think it was 2012, then had at his annual lecture political parties and invited me to give the keynote. It was in Ladi Kwali Hall at the Sheraton in Abuja. That day, almost all of those who formed the APC were sitting on the high table, from the man who's in the villa now, Buhari, everybody. They were all lined up there. And I took time to go through what a political party was and why it is valuable to the democratic process. As I said in another program that I appeared on not so long ago, I went back to the original 1911 book, actually, on political parties, and then brought it to now. The ideas, the values, and the vision of society that a party captures essentially is what directs society's path. If you are trying to achieve a certain goal and people are defecting the way you reported now, the question is, how are we going to have a public conversation with people who, we really don't know exactly what they believe in? So that is the first problem. Political parties are not political parties in our country. Now, because political parties are not political parties, the only thing that matters is personal ambition. And one of the saddest parts of what has happened is that they've pushed thinking out of the door. Anybody who thinks is an enemy, and they must use personal insults. Somebody who came presenting the party on another program I appeared on no more than 2 hours ago said that, I was an unstable person or some silly thing like that. And that, in fact, in my home state, the people in the current government were trying to defect, or I don't know if they've defected or not, that they know that Labour won the election. This was an APC person saying they know Labour won the election, governorship, everything. So that is because they know they didn't win the election. That's why they're trying to come to APC. So I said to the interviewer, look, I don't have to talk anymore. This man is making my case while abusing me. The point is that our democracy doesn't have meaning. The purpose of serving the people has been lost. It's about these individual games for power. And that's what the whole idea of citizens getting together to establish rational public conversation, which is what the idea of this so-called shadow government is.
Okay, maybe we'll talk about how it intends to operate in that sense. Maybe you can just help us, because I'm sure that perhaps why Felix Moka is saying what he says, for instance, in parliamentary system, that is as clear as crystal. In a presidential system, is it just having a strong opposition, viable opposition? How does it work?
It depends on what presidential system. That the people are how government is being run. Well, if you can bring together a group of people who believe in similar things and can organize themselves well enough to be able to ferret out information, first on what government is doing, second on options to what government is doing, and then make those bear to the people, you would have added huge value to democracy. But their panic is that they don't want conversation at all. When I talked about fascism, I didn't start saying that today. Look, you go back and read Jacques Ellul on propaganda, and you see how propaganda systematically leads to fascism. And that's why I keep referring to Goebbels and how Hitler emerged. I mean, great fascists of this world were populists who cared for the people. But once you hear your voice long enough and no other voice, after a while, people who are near you say, you are God.